You see the prompt and then you have just 5 minutes in your exams to actually plan a plot that scores well on the mark scheme. Now, what should you really do in those 5 minutes? Of course, you must spend those 5 minutes to plan your narrative story plot using a popular structure like Freytag's pyramid. Now, in this video, I'll share with you how you can modify your Freytag pyramid slightly to create that interesting and convincing story plot. The Freytag pyramid has 6 components: exposition, first conflict, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. Now, I'm recommending 3 rising actions and 2 falling actions. The logic is that students always know how to begin their story. They're also very clear, they figure out how to end the story. But the middle is a shaky ground. That is the reason that this video will actually cover how to create your story plot, your journey from rising action to the climax in such a way that not only it's interesting but also fairly convincing for the examiner. In order to demonstrate this plot, I'm going to use the popular movie Jo Jeeta Wahi Sikandar. From now on, I'll call it JJWS. But before we begin, there are 3 terminologies I would like to know. I would like you to know. External conflict. It is the struggle of the character which come from the outside environment. Internal conflict are the struggles and the challenges which are present within the person, his dilemmas, his doubts. And then the word action. The word action suggests the actual work or actual things that the character do in the story. Now, the actions can give rise to conflicts. Sometimes conflicts can propel action and make the story move forward. So they both are quite strongly interlinked in the story. The exposition. In the exposition, know your characters. See how they are related to each other. What is the setting? But most importantly, make sure you decide what are the goals of your protagonist and what's the motivation behind it. And also, what is his emotional vulnerability? Now, look at in JJWS. The main characters are Ratan and Sanjay and Shekhar. Now, Ratan and Sanjay come from a middle class upbringing and they study in a school called Model School. Now, they both are brothers. However, the antagonist is Shekhar. Shekhar studies in Rajput school. He comes from a privileged background. Now, Ratan and Shekhar are rivals. The goal is that both of them want to win the coveted cycling championship. And what's the emotional vulnerability? The emotional vulnerability of our main character, that means our protagonist, that who is Sanjay and Ratan, who are brothers, is that they come from middle class. So relationships and dignity and pride are really important for them. Next comes the first conflict. In the first conflict, the technique that you need to understand is that there should be a presence of an external conflict. Now, once the external conflict is presented, there should also be a stake, a very clear, tangible stake. For example, in JJWS, the conflict comes from the fact that this is Ratan's last year at school. So, in a way, a last chance to win the race. So, the conflict is that Ratan must break Shekhar's winning streak this year itself. And the stake is, if he doesn't win the race this year, he does not have any other chance. In all the 4 rising actions, we will have the same techniques. One is the action, one is external conflict, then internal conflict, and then stakes. But just that stakes from now on would be both tangible as well as emotional. Let me show you step by step with the example of the movie. Rising action 1 in JJWS, the action is that Shekhar goes to Ratan's father cafe and humiliates him for his upbringing. He also boasts about him being the cycle championship and warns him that he's going to make Ratan bite the dust even this year. So the truth is that Ratan lost last year's race neck and neck, and that too because Shekhar actually has a geared cycle which Ratan's father cannot afford. The conflict now, the external conflict comes from the fact that Ratan must win this race irrespective of the cycle that he has. The internal conflict is what Ratan experiences within. That is a sense of anger against the entitlement that Shekhar carries, because Shekhar feels that he's entitled to win just because of his privileged upbringing. Now, what about the stakes? Now, the stakes are dual. One is a tangible. The tangible is Ratan must win the trophy or else he loses his chance to win the race. But the emotional stake is that if he loses the race, he also loses his dignity thereafter. The action in the rising action 2 is that Sanjay falls in love with a girl from Rajput school, but he does not tell her that he's from model school. He thinks that she loves him because of who he is. Funny, isn't it? Now, on the other hand, Ratan's father actually puts 25,000 rupees in buying a bicycle, a geared bicycle for Ratan to give him a fair chance in this year's race. Now, the conflict, that is the external conflict, remains the same, which is just winning the trophy or winning the race. However, the internal conflict has heightened. Now, you remember we are talking about that the rising action, the tension should, right? Now, tension is rising because of internal conflict. Why? Because now for Ratan, it is no more win and loss of his own dignity. It is also now his father's money at stake. It is also his father's trust, his school's dignity. Everything is at stake. Also, internal conflict comes in Sanjay's mind because he has lied to this girl whom he loved and he hopes that she chooses him above everything else. Now, the stakes is winning the trophy or losing the trophy, but the emotional stake is that if Ratan loses the trophy, he loses his own dignity as well. In the Rising Action 3, however, Sanjay comes to know that she does not love him for who he is. Instead, she mocks at him and sides with Shekhar. Sanjay feels highly humiliated and furious. But on the other side, Shekhar actually sabotages Ratan. He meets him in the morning time where he practices and gets into a fight with him in which he falls off a cliff and is grievously injured. Now, the external conflict, the action is clear. The action is the sabotage of Shekhar and his friend. However, the external conflict has risen now. The external conflict is that the model school now does not have a chance to participate in the race, let alone winning the race, because there is no one else other than Ratan who could stand against Shekhar. Internal conflict is feeling defeated without even being defeated. The tangible stake is that there is no chance for model school to win the race now. But however, the emotional stake is that they cannot accept this defeat. Somebody must salvage the situation. In the climax, we enter with a lot of chaos. However, the climax is a peak tense moment of the story. In the climax, we will again use a technique of external conflict, internal conflict, and the stakes, both emotional and tangible. In the movie, Sanjay realizes his responsibility and decides to participate in the race for the sake of his father and brother. There's still 1.5 months to the race and he practices vigorously. On the day of the race, Ratan prepares the new cycle for Sanjay and asks him to try his best. The external conflict, however, comes that Shekhar and his friends do not want to win fairly. They want to win by hook or by crook, and hence they exhibit aggressive behavior on the track with every cyclist. With Sanjay as well, they try to block him. They belittle him for participating in the race, and finally, when nothing works, they hold him. His friends actually stop him, and while Shekhar gets on with his race, giving him a leading edge. Now, the internal conflict is very strong here. For Sanjay, this is not just about winning the race. It is about whether he wins the race or not. Shekhar must not win the race. It's not only the dignity of his family, it is not his own dignity, it is not just the dignity of his school, but it is also the person conflict and the emotion that are present for Ratan in Sanjay. He cannot let Shekhar win. This internal conflict is highly strong. He somehow tackles Shekhar's friends and enters into the race once again. In the final laps, he enters into the arena with I think 13th or 14th in the race, while Shekhar is at 6th or 7th. The climactic moment comes here when Shekhar and Sanjay are just 200 meters away from the finish. Now the stakes are who will win, whether Shekhar or Sanjay. But the emotional stake is that Sanjay definitely knows that it is this moment which is a defining moment, after which Shekhar and the likes of Shekhar would never be able to stand up to him, never would feel entitled to anything. At this point of time, the tension is at the peak. In the following action, Sanjay uses a cycling gear in order to overtake Shekhar at the final moment to claim the victory. This is definitely a nail-biting finish for the audience. All the conflicts are resolved. There are no more stakes present now. In the following action 2, an emotional satisfaction overtakes the readers and the characters. In the resolution, the title of the movie is redefined to not just winning a trophy but overcoming oneself. So you see, the techniques from rising action to climax are very clearly defined. It's really simple. Trust, believe, and rise and shine, my students. Thank you.